Hello, dear friends. It's Drake with you today. Let's dive into the story. Jasmine Kaur was born on September 14, 1999, in India, and became the first child to a woman named Raj Paul Kaur. It's important to note that the word Kaur translates to princess, often used as a second name, but in today's narrative, it was her surname. After Jasmine, Raj Paul had twin sons, Gurman and Sukhmo. The children's father passed away when Jasmine was just 6 years old, and the family struggled to cope with this loss. In 2017, at the age of 18, Jasmine decided to embark on a journey to Australia in search of new opportunities, knowing that her relatives lived there. Her uncle, residing in Adelaide with his wife and daughter, warmly welcomed her, and Jasmine moved in with them. Driven by her interest in medicine and the desire to help others, Jasmine aimed to enter the University of South Australia. After passing exams, she enrolled in a nursing program, hoping to contribute to the family that took her in. Jasmine also took on the responsibility of preparing meals for them, showcasing remarkable culinary skills. But that wasn't all. Her aunt and cousin admired her fashion sense, and Jasmine, with her talent for makeup and fashion knowledge, willingly shared her expertise. Despite her young age, she proved to be a reliable, responsible, and conscientious young woman. The excellent upbringing and education provided by her parents complemented Jasmine's compassionate nature, making her an exemplary figure to those around her. Attached to her mother, she deeply missed her and regularly communicated with her and other close relatives, sharing details of her daily life. To gain practical experience before completing her medical studies, Jasmine took a job at a nursing home in the suburbs of Adelaide. It's believed that fate brought her together with Taragjot Singh there. Taragjot, born in 1999 in a village in the Indian state of Punjab, was the firstborn in his family. Over time, a second child joined the family. Mohan Singh, the father, worked as a farmer on a small plot where the family lived. The atmosphere at Taragjot's home was always tense, with Mohan Singh resorting to excessive cruelty to resolve conflicts, instilling fear in his sons. However, their mother provided a sanctuary, calming and comforting them. The brothers also cherished their maternal grandparents, feeling secure in their presence. Taragjot was noted for his immeasurable kindness and sincerity, uplifting everyone around him. In school, he excelled as a student, eager for new knowledge and never settling for mediocrity. In the senior classes, it was time for Taragjot to decide on his future education. Having scored high grades, he proved that he was on the right path to a promising career. By 2016, when Taragjot completed school, his grandparents managed to gather a small sum to help him relocate. Australia had long beckoned him, and he finally seized the opportunity to become a resident of charming Adelaide, as many young people did at that time. He successfully passed the standard English language test, a prerequisite for admission to the University of South Australia, and joined the ranks of students. Numerous directions and fields of study opened up before Taragjot. Contemplating his choices, he opted for information technology and set his sights on obtaining a bachelor's degree. Simultaneously, he had to work to support himself and progress further. For Taragjot, this was not a challenge. He explored various jobs, with most of them related to elderly care. Colleagues loved and respected him. Employers valued his honesty and kindness, always leaving positive reviews and recommendations for Taragjot. However, he continued to work diligently, and it soon became clear that showing compassion and helping the less fortunate was his true calling. Over time, Taragjot's fortunes improved. He saved up money and moved to a separate apartment in the city suburbs. There, he lived with another young man whom he quickly befriended. In 2018, when Taragjot and Jasmine first crossed paths, she had already achieved significant success in her profession. Colleagues praised her unwavering dedication and optimism, and her employer admired this sweet, kind-hearted girl. It's no wonder that Taragjot, who was loved for the same qualities, quickly bonded with Jasmine. Through workplace interactions and attending collective events together, their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship, and by April 2020, they were a loving couple. Taragjot never hid his true intentions. Now, he openly declared that he saw in Jasmine the woman with whom he wanted to build a life and a strong family. However, over time, he became increasingly insecure. Tariq Jot suddenly doubted Jasmine's actions and motives. Jealousy consumed him, and he began demanding detailed reports from her about where she had been and with whom she had interacted. He tried to control her every move, and if she planned to meet friends after work, he would instantly become furious. Persistent calls and unfounded accusations became part of his behavior, and one day he demanded that Jasmine leave her friends and return home immediately. For Jasmine, such a life became unbearable. Unable to endure it, she confided in her mother. Upon learning of the total control exerted by her daughter's suitor, the mother naturally disapproved of their relationship. However, Tariq Jot paid no attention to others' objections, fully immersed in his own world, desiring assurance that his beloved would be with him for a lifetime. In October 2020, Tariq Jot bought engagement rings and proposed to Jasmine. Despite disagreements and clear signs, she agreed to be his wife. However, the engagement did not calm Tariq Jot. It only heightened his suspicions. Now, using any available free time, he would appear unexpectedly at Jasmine's workplace with the sole purpose of keeping an eye on her. Experiencing the euphoria of the proposal, Jasmine regained her composure and began to reconsider her fiancé's behavior. Doubts plagued her, and the idea of ending the relationship increasingly occupied her thoughts. Realizing that her association with Tariq Jot negatively impacted her mental and emotional health, on January 4th, 2021, Jasmine informed him that they had to part ways. In response, she faced angry threats and words from Tariq Jot, claiming that if she left him, he would end his own life. The next day, after finishing work, Jasmine noticed Tariq Jot watching her from the window. During the break, she went to talk to him, and he once again pleaded for her to stay. But she remained resolute in her decision. That's when Tariq Jot again started threatening self-harm and insisted that she would be responsible for anything that happened to him. On the same evening, Jasmine learned that Tariq Jot had taken a large amount of sleeping pills. She never took his words seriously and never thought he was capable of such actions. Concerned, she urgently contacted his apartment neighbor. The friend arrived and took Tariq Jot to the hospital, where he wrote a statement claiming he had attempted suicide, but didn't take responsibility for that decision. In their breakup, Tariq Jot blamed Jasmine's family, insinuating that her relatives influenced her decision to end their relationship. The next morning, on January 6th, 2021, a psychiatrist examined Tariq Jot, finding no signs of mental illness, but concluding that the overdose was likely linked to an inability to cope with the relationship's breakup. Tariq Jot was discharged, but just a few hours later, the former fiancé unexpectedly appeared at Jasmine's home, insisting that she go with him to discuss something important. His real intention, however, was to persuade her to reconsider and restart the relationship. This attempt failed again as Jasmine refused, and in a desperate attempt to win her back, he threatened to publicly release their intimate video. Tariq Jot knew that this would be unbearable for Jasmine's respectable family. The manipulation did not achieve the desired effect, and faced with Jasmine's indifference, Tariq Jot sent the video to her mother. Shocked, Raj Paul contacted her daughter, who, as expected, was furious about the situation. The next day, the jealous ex showed up at Jasmine's workplace, standing next to his car and patiently waiting for her to finish her shift. Despite her ignoring him and simply leaving, he persisted. This time, Tariq Jot slowly followed her in his car, but suddenly abandoned the pursuit, allowing her to reach home undisturbed. Nevertheless, that night, emotionally exhausted, Jasmine couldn't sleep properly. Tariq Jot's pressure intensified every day, and each time, he threatened to share intimate videos with more people if she didn't return to him immediately. January 28th, 2021, became a critical day for Jasmine. Unable to endure it any longer, she officially reported her ex-fiancé to the police for harassment. Every detail of their relationship was documented on paper. Given the seriousness of the case, the police initiated an investigation and met with Tariq Jot on February 9th to understand the situation. As a result, he received a warning for his unacceptable behavior. It's worth noting that by this point, Tarakjot had developed a habit of composing text messages containing insults and mockery. And although most of these messages were never sent to Jasmine, they indicated the extent of his obsession. A few days later, the young man attempted suicide again, but his neighbor discovered him in time. When asked about the reasons for his actions in the hospital, Tarakjot said he couldn't cope with the breakup and begged not to be hospitalized. Surprisingly, his plea was heeded, and he was discharged under medical observation. A few days later, he began taking medication prescribed by doctors for depression, anxiety, and agitation. However, at the same time, thoughts of harming Jasmine became increasingly intrusive in his mind. Focused and meticulous, Tarakjot began developing his sinister plan. On March 4th, 2021, he managed to obtain a map marking the locations of almost all surveillance cameras in Adelaide. The next day, he inserted his SIM card into another phone and left it at home to create an alibi. To avoid being detected by cameras or recognized by anyone he knew, he temporarily borrowed his neighbor's blue Jeep. On the same day, Tarakjot purchased gloves, cable ties, and a shovel from a hardware store. The only thing he overlooked was that every move of his was recorded by surveillance cameras in the store. He then drove to Jasmine's workplace, where he waited for her to finish. Around 10 p.m., as she completed her shift and stepped onto a deserted street, unsuspecting of what awaited her, Tarakjot suddenly attacked her. Grabbing her arms, he dragged her into the car. In the vehicle, he taped Jasmine's mouth and eyes, tied her hands and feet, and driving to a secluded spot, transferred his former fiancée to the trunk of the car. He proceeded north, towards another city nearly 400 kilometers away from Adelaide. Between 10:30 p.m. and 3:30 a.m., throughout the entire route, 5 city surveillance cameras several times captured the car he was using. Upon reaching a location known only to him, Tarakjot got out of the car and began digging a shallow grave near the road in this area. He then opened the trunk and attempted to injure Jasmine with a knife to the throat, but failing to inflict significant damage, he didn't complete the act. Instead, he lowered the girl into the grave and began burying her alive. All of this happening at dawn on March 6th. After burying her, Tarakjot got back in the car, drove away, discarded Jasmine's belongings along with the remaining cable ties, tape, and other items, and disposed of the gloves and balaclava at a location known as the Death Rock. On the same day, noticing that Jasmine had not returned home, her family began to worry. When she did not show up for work, her employer became concerned, especially upon realizing that her car was still parked in front of the building. Unaware of Jasmine's whereabouts, her relatives contacted the authorities and filed a missing person report. For the detective in charge of the investigation, it seemed unlikely that the girl had left voluntarily. He was convinced that she was being held against her will. The detective reviewed surveillance footage at Jasmine's workplace, hoping to find a lead. Eventually, one recording from the last night featured a person near the building who, for most of the morning, drove towards another city. To accurately identify the suspect, authorities issued a public appeal to anyone with information about a young man around 20 years old who had contact with Jasmine or was in the vicinity in the days leading up to her disappearance. Unfortunately, no one came forward. On March 7th, investigators approached Tarakjot to speak with him, considering the prior police reports about stalking. Initially, he denied any involvement in the girl's disappearance, but later, he told investigators that he and Jasmine had argued, and she allegedly attempted suicide. According to Tarakjot, after his fiancée lost consciousness, he assumed she had died and buried her in a remote location. The following day, the apprehended suspect led the police to a gruesome pit where he had buried Jasmine's body. It was buried under a 30-centimeter layer of sand, with her hands tied behind her back, legs restrained with cable ties, and eyes and mouth taped shut. The victim's throat had been cut, but the wounds appeared to be superficial. The body was sent for forensic examination, and criminal charges were promptly filed against Tarakjot. He was charged with failure to report the death of the girl, a mandatory requirement, which resulted in him being restricted from leaving his place of residence. The investigation was confident that he wouldn't attempt to flee. During a more detailed interrogation, serious inconsistencies emerged in Tarak Jat's statements, leading to his arrest. The autopsy report on Jasmine confirmed that she was still alive at the time of burial, and the cause of death was lack of air. These findings ultimately shed light on the horrifying nature of the events. On March 8, 2021, Tarak Jat was charged with murder, and he was placed in pretrial detention. Despite asserting his innocence, he was denied bail. A few days later, a passerby discovered evidence, Jasmine's belongings. The prosecution requested a delay of at least 9 months for case preparation against the alleged perpetrator. His first appearance in the Supreme Court was scheduled for March 2022, but Tarak Jat fell ill, tested positive for COVID-19, and instead, his lawyer appeared on his behalf, proclaiming his client's innocence and actively defending him. The trial was postponed until February 6, 2023, when Tarak Jat pleaded guilty in the Adelaide Supreme Court. He openly admitted to kidnapping Jasmine with the intention of taking her life. His confession spared the grieving family from the ordeal of a lengthy trial, which would have brought up very painful questions. 5 months later, on July 5, 2023, in the South Australian Supreme Court, the judge handed down Tarak Jat's sentence life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 22 years and 10 months. This meant he could be eligible for parole. However, if released, Tarak Jat would have to leave the country. Before concluding the hearing, the judge explained to Tarak Jat the significance of his actions. He emphasized that the murder of Jasmine Kaur was premeditated and methodical, with the perpetrator fully aware of the monstrous nature of the act. The sentencing hearing took place on August 1, 2023, considering various factors such as age, mental health issues, and origin. The judge determined that the non-parole period should exceed 20 years. Tarak Jat was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 22 years and 10 months. While this provided a measure of relief for the family, Raj Paul expressed that she would never truly be happy again, as her greatest wish was for her daughter to be by her side. The grieving mother continued to miss their daily conversations and nightly wishes of good night, a routine they had shared for nearly 20 years. Despite justice prevailing, the fact that the perpetrator could potentially be released in just 22 years weighed heavily on them, while they faced the rest of their lives without dear Jasmine. The close relatives of the deceased decided to create memorial spaces at home to never forget her pure soul and kind heart. Thanks for watching, and I recommend checking out other videos. Click now, and don't forget to hit the bell to stay updated on new stories. Until next time, take care.